Okay, everybody, welcome to Nerdy Book Club. This month's pick is The Spirit 80th. What is it called? I don't even know the name of it. The Spirit by Will
80th?
Eisner. It's the 80th anniversary. Just loading here. Celebration. I should have known that. So this is a collection of stories ranging from, I believe, 1940 to about 1948. The reason I picked it is because of, number one, its historical significance, but also because I really enjoy Will Eisner. And I don't know, I mean, over the many years of Nerdy, we've tended to avoid classic comics, and I've always wanted to do this one. So this is, I finally got my wish. So anyway, I guess we'll just go around the room. And how about I'll start with Patrick at the top right. Patrick, what's your rating and your mini review?
I'll start with a 6.5. I read it. I am glad that I read it because I feel like I'm a better comic book reader for having read it. And then I'm not feeling 100%, so I just may be a little more lurkier than usual. Keith, Reed, and Company, let's get you three losers out of the way. Go.
Wow.
That's the best approach, really.
Yes, indeed. Also, Oliver, my condolences to your basement.
Yeah, it's we're working on it.
It's a bummer.
Yeah.
Oh.
So you give a flood a 2.
Yeah.
That's generous, I think.
It's out of 50, Lucy.
It's still too generous. It should be
It's
like
true.
negatives.
Yeah, like negative 50.
I'll give this a 7. I love this sort of thing. Like when I was a little kid, it's I actually don't, but I never read The Spirit. I read some of his graphic novels. The one about New York City, I think. It's been a long time, but this is these short, brief stories. It's actually rather, you know what? I'm already talked myself up. I'll go up to an 8. So, these short stories that
It didn't take much.
these short stories that tell a story, pretty much fully encapsulated. There's like every now and then a little hint at a larger universe, but it's just such tight economic storytelling. It's like the sort of thing that I especially loved that had a big giant like Smithsonian history of comic strips. I'm surprised this wasn't in there, but yeah, it was the sort of thing that growing up I just loved and read tons of all the time. All right, Oliver.
I think I'm at a 7. I enjoyed reading it. It's I kind of liked the individual stories, and there's some interesting historical stuff in there. It didn't really captivate me at any point. I wasn't bored, but I also wasn't super engaged with it. I appreciate it kind of as a historical curiosity. I certainly don't regret reading it, but it was kind of a mildly interesting thing, and that's I think where I kind of ended up on. Alex, what's your score? I'm sorry, Lucy.
I got skipped. I did read it. I went out of my way to finish it today. I don't think I can rate it though, because it's like, it's important. It's one of those things like I don't know how to I feel weird giving it a number grade. It's one of those things I'm really glad I read. I've always been meaning to. I'm really surprised I've never read any Will Eisner stuff. I don't know what's wrong with me. I was just looking up real quick, man, he did a bunch of stuff. I should read more of it. So yeah, I'm just excited to hear what people have to say. Any cool tidbits. Anyway, Alex, now.
I would give it a 7 as well. I really love the artwork. I can definitely see why Will Eisner is one of the greats. The stories were kind of hit and miss for me. I wish there had been a really larger collection, like an Essential Spirit. But other than that, I thought it was a really a fun breeze. Carlos, how about you?
I am going to give it a 7 overall. I think some individual stories hit really well, like the strange case of Mrs. Paraffin, I think is really, really well done. And sound might even be like a 9. Like, I think it's just like masterful comic storytelling over 8 pages. But some of it hasn't held up as well. And I don't know, some of it even, there's even some individual pages are sort of masterful and some others are muddled. Like I had to read them a couple of times to figure out what was going on. So yeah, and once again, historically important. I mean, it's interesting because Will Eisner was one of the first people in America that was like really making comics for adults and really thought that it could be like major media or art. Like he went back and forth. So it's easy to see like why this stuff never went out of print, like Dennis Kitchen mentioned in the introduction. Like if this is all you got, like you're gonna look to it. And I don't know, there are a lot of cool lessons in there. Sorry, that was really long. I'll go to Mike Prime.
Hey, thanks, Carlos. I'll give it a 7 also. I can't think of anybody other than maybe Carl Barks, who was doing comics as well during the 1940s. It's like really ahead of his time. I think though that for me, what holds it back from any higher than a 7 is that comics have progressed so much in the last, I don't know, 70, 80 years that it's not a type of short condensed storytelling that I really enjoy all that much. But I can see the value of it and how it was foundational to building what we have now. So I will hand it over to Jolie.
Thanks, Mike. I will echo things that you said, and I'll also echo things that Alex said. I can't give it more than a 7 overall. I will give one of the stories. Okay, I give the art a 9 to 10 because the art is so good. It's always just really good. I think that he's probably the best inker in the world. He's so good. It's just so rich. But like Alex said, I wish we had read more like some. Did you say that you had wished it was more like an essential collection and not just like a collection?
Yeah, the essential bikes to watch out for, but essential spirit.
Yeah, like something like that would have whet my appetite a little bit better. Like that's what I was assuming was happening, and this seemed like they got 5 guys and 1 woman for posterity, asked them what their favorite spirit stories were, and then they collected those stories. So that was kind of, put a damper on the party because everyone has different favorites, and I just wanted to read. I didn't want to read a sampling of the spirit. I wanted to read the spirit. I will throw it to Sean if he's there.
Right now he's muted.
Is he there?
Oh, is this not unmuting? Oh, I have to be on the window.
There you are.
So yeah, I would give the art like a 7 or an 8, but the actual story would be a 5. And like my lasting impression is that I just don't have any strong impressions of it. It didn't really, inspire me, if you will. So overall, wouldn't continue reading it. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, is that everybody then? Okay, I'll give it an 8. I've read more Spirit than this, and like most of you said, this isn't a best of, and it's not a complete collection. It's just a sampling, so that's kind of a strike against it. But I also did not, my socks were not knocked off by any one of these stories, but my socks were knocked off by certain panels for sure, which we'll talk about later. But I think overall, the thing I like best about Will Eisner, besides the fact that his art is so good, is that I think it's important. The important lesson to take away from this is to concentrate on. I wish that modern comics concentrated on storytelling and telling complete stories rather than just endless soap operas, which is a completely different way of telling a story. And Marvel and DC's obsession with changing status quos and shocking events and deaths and resurrections and blah blah blah. That does nothing for me. And I would rather see, for example, the animated comic version of Batman is far more interesting than the dick in my face Batman. That's the adult version of Batman. And when I say that, I mean literally dick in my face, because that's how they drew Batman once in the last couple of years. But anyway, so that's what I take away from this. And when I read it, again, I'm not blown away by how remarkable any one story is, but it's more just seeing the art form used so well. Like, if I can just share my screen, and then I'll get to the questions. Okay, where's share screen?
Bottom, green arrow.
Okay. Okay, share screen. Can you guys? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to point out too that some did appreciate Batman's deck. I just wanted to.
Okay.
I mean, but there's just so many boobs, but we get one.
We'll talk about we'll save the last 15 minutes.
Okay, back to the spirit though. Back to the spirit.
Okay, so now this is the first page that really jumped out at me. If you guys can see this page here, where these two bad guys are in their little lair here, and I just love the fact that you see this frame around them, like in the foreground. Then you see this sort of endless tunnel that goes on forever. It's like an underground sewer or something. And I love how this opens up the page. Then when you go down to the bottom, you get to the spirit that's Dolan, right? That's the commissioner. He is in a very similarly designed panel, except it's just a regular office, right? With the phone in the foreground and then him going down this endless corridor. I just thought little design elements like that were very, very cool. And something that not only is it almost completely lost today, but because comics have become focused more on digital, where you just show one panel at a time, I don't think an artist would take the time to design a page that way. And I think that's one of my favorite things about this book. Again, you could argue, does it really make the story better? I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. But at least it gives it, a feeling of being well thought out, I guess. So I like that. But go ahead.
Also, I was just going to say that this is the first spirits. All of these guys, almost all of them making comics at this point. When is this story from? 1940?
40 something, yeah.
Are young. Young. I don't know.
20 or something, yeah.
20, yeah. So there's a huge amount of time where Will Eisner grows as an artist. And I just feel I don't know. If you take a look at Sound, when is Sound published? I'm not sure if there's all the design elements do serve the story. And I think it's worth noting that we're also watching the progression of, from a talented, amateur artist who had, not an amateur artist, but an artist starting out,
novice,
had some ideas about what comics could do, to I don't know, Sound or Gold, or in some ways even the Torch, all of these other things, other than, that's I think that stuff is sort of cool. But if we're going to go to panel and page design, right, he has all these typographical elements here. I don't like looking at myself. Just give me a second. So let me put myself view. He has all these typographical elements in here, and they take up a lot of the page. And then when he thinks it's just the cleaning lady, like all the onomatopoeia stuff, all the typographical sounds that are in there, like just go completely away. And in fact, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller until you have this silent panel. And like he starts to feel the effect of the poison, and then they take over the panel again. And then there's sort of him reacting, and there's all like he reintroduces it in this next row. Like that is like a storyteller at like who is using like all of the parts of the medium sort of at his top level. Like I think, you know, the First Spirit story is great and it's like fun adventure comics. But I think some of the other stuff is like really fascinating. I liked Gold as well. I didn't think about it as much because I don't know, the design stuff and sound is like really what excites me about the medium.
Yeah, sound I think was the best one too. Like it just was nice to see like a creative person that's allowed to play, basically, because he had like free reign over that. And I love that so much. Like you can definitely tell, like with all the different things he was exploring, he just was a really creative, like gifted, talented artist, and like he was allowed to like do whatever.
Yeah, and like a lot of people who are working currently, everyone sort of has a hold on comics in the creation, but they excel singularly at something like penciling or coloring, and they're not necessarily, or like writing, and they're not necessarily good at everything. He's good at everything.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
Yeah, like he's a designer, he's a letterer, he is the writer, penciler, inker. He's an artist when it comes to this medium, and that's something that I don't see a lot. And when I do see it, I'm excited about it. But like, and this, like, I'm excited to see it here, especially in sound. But
like his character design too is so fun. Like it's cartoony without being too much.
Yeah,
I love it. And like he's got you can tell too in the back of the book, let me show, just like you can tell he has a really good handle on anatomy too. Like this page right here with the woman reclining, you can see that. I love that page so much. Like the leader reclining, he's like kicking those guys' asses.
Where is that? Is that near the end?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're like kind of like covers.
Pin-up.
Yeah.
Or pinups.
Love
pin-up
that
section,
page
yeah.
so much.
Yeah. Like now that I'm back there, the one where he's fighting the alligator, like really great example of really good inking. Like that's you know, using ink and brush to create different textures. Even though you're using one medium for two different things, he's able to manipulate them and do it well. Whereas some people I've seen, like some people have very similar strokes or line work. There's some line work that reminds me of Yannick's line work, Yannick Paquette, where I gotta find it. It's really cool to see two artists use the same line but use it differently and achieve different things. When I find it, I'll show it. But I was gonna finish my sentence with saying, and thank you, Lucy, for breaking the silence because it was getting awkward for me. It was just like underwhelming, and I don't know if anyone else felt that way.
What was
like, the spirit?
Oh, the stories. You mean?
Yeah. Like it felt.
The only one that really like sort of got me was like sound. It's like a great little like telltale heart horror story.
Well, I think they were very like, this is a very odd selection. Like,
it is.
Because I mean, they referenced several times the sans serif story as being like like the most famous one.
Yeah.
Why
Not
is
in
it
there.
not in here? So I feel like they had like a limited selection of. I mean, like a lot of.
Yeah, I think it was just more to show like the breadth of his work, and I think that was more of the focus on this collection. And like,
I mean, the spirit is like a minor character in most of these stories.
Exactly.
You know,
well, by the midpoint, like the spirit was just a minor character in most of his own stories. Like,
that's true. Yeah.
I know, but
made it.
I feel like we don't.
Well, okay. How about this? Let me jump to some of the questions that I have here. So, Frank Miller had a very long interview with Will Eisner. It's kind of a famous one. I think it was published as a book. And anyway, one of the quotes from this interview, Frank Miller says, "Without realizing it, I'd essentially characterize comics as the poor man's film, thinking each panel the equivalent of a frozen frame of celluloid. Will Eisner ripped me to pieces. What counts," he told me, "is panel content, the function of the individual panel to advance the story. Every panel must have story content," he insisted, despite my protests. "If you want to make movies, go make movies." So I know that today comics tend to be long, strips with one image with maybe a bubble, kind of more talking heads. But in this book, I found a lot of examples of pure visual storytelling. Even going back to the very first story in the book, did anyone else find anything that stood out to them as a really good example of that?
Well, actually, I think the first story is a retelling of the first comic. I don't think that was the original one. I think it's just a place setting one. I think he redrew it.
Oh, did he?
He redrew it a couple times.
Okay, well,
copyright 1966.
Okay.
If you look at the bottom panel, like this is tiny right there.
Good eye.
But yes, no. To your larger point, like I said, I talked about earlier. Like I read Smithsonian had like a history of comic strips, and they used to have like full page comic strips, but they would also tell like these epic stories, and you basically had like 12 panels to tell a story, and like this reminded me so much of that. I mean, for a variety of reasons. One, because it was contemporaneous with those ones, but like I remember like reading like a year of Mickey Mouse comics where like Mickey Mouse would like go to the Old West and have these things that was like, as you say, like each panel had to tell a story, and like he's doing all this in 6 pages. He's got to do a whole lot. Like there's no wasted space in any of this. Like, So I got that impression as well. Like I said, it reminded me a lot of what I grew up reading, which was older comics, which was contemporaneous with this. So
I do feel that it felt like surprisingly modern in some ways, more than I was expecting.
Yeah.
It's a lot more meta than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I like
a lot
that,
more
though.
like fourth wall breaking, a lot more in jokes, a lot more of that kind of thing, which I wasn't really expecting. I was kind of expecting more sort of it to be more played straight.
Yeah, I thought it'd be more like Dick Tracy-ish, crossed with Superman, and I was pleasantly surprised. It was very different.
Well, Dick Tracy could get somewhat meta.
Sometimes he can be silly, but like that's why I said crossed with. Like I thought it'd be more in between those two, but it wasn't. It was more like its own little thing. It was like taking Dick Tracy to extreme more so.
Yeah.
I agree with Lucy. I think that's what I was expecting, and that's why I was maybe underwhelmed. It's because my expectation was noir detective stories.
I think a lot of his stories are that, and or at least
he wrote so
real
many.
early. Yeah,
I'm sure you could find one for that.
Yeah,
like one a week for like 10 years. Like is.
I think it was like
spirit stories.
I think it was like 30 years. I think it was a real long time. I think it went into the 80s.
No, it didn't run quite for that long.
No, I think it went to 52. I think it was about 12 years.
Well,
Yeah.
in the book it mentions like the estate let other people write for the spirit.
Mhm.
So it did keep going after he died. So if you want to be like broader terms, the spirit.
But I mean, like these stories, they go from the 40s to whatever. What's the last one?
I think it was just in the 40s. I thought it just covered that time period.
Yeah, like the actual strip ran from 40 to 52. And then in the 60s, he'd do like 1 or 2 stories here and there in the 70s and 80s.
Okay.
And then after he died, DC let other creators like Darwin Cook and Alan Moore or whoever do like,
yeah. It's
various
mentioned
things.
in the book.
right.
Also, I just realized something. Frank Miller was the one who did the Spirit movie, right?
Yes.
So going off what you just said about how Frank Miller talked about comics are just the poor man's films, and Will Eisner lambasted him for that. And then Frank Miller went on to make a critically panned film adaptation of The
Are
Spirit.
you saying he did
Is
that on
very-
purpose?
Telling.
It's very fitting.
Right.
I mean, there's also something to be said. I mean, we see Will Eisner's influence everywhere. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. It was like, for the same reason that we see Harvey Kurtzman's influence everywhere, as like Eisner and Kurtzman for like, after sort of the comic strip phase when like in the 20s and 30s when like adults were reading like comic strips, like this was it. Like it was Eisner and Kurtzman who were writing for adults. But Eisner especially like took a lot of people under his wing, stayed in comics in a way that maybe Kurtzman didn't. Like had a relationship with Frank Miller, had a relationship with Scott McCloud. Like it's like, yeah, his with Dennis Kitchen ended up publishing A Contract with God, which, you know, after The Spirit, like 40 years after The Spirit, right? He comes out with, you know, what is maybe his masterwork, like a collection of short stories that's like very different from this. Like the first, like the story A Contract with God in A Contract with God, like still gives me chills like every time I read it. So I don't know, like I think it's worth talking about his influence and sort of how it started here. Like I read A Contract with God when I was in high school, and then it took me like 4 or 5 years to read The Spirit or any Spirit stories.
Oh, I see. I thought you meant you read the whole thing in 5 years.
No, I have not read the whole thing.
I don't think anyone has, but yeah, it's possible.
I mean, you can get, there's the full collection if you want to sit
Drop
down.
over $1,000.
Yeah.
Is that really how much it costs?
$1,000.
At the time, it was $1,300 for all of it.
But it was like 36 volumes.
Yeah.
And then the
Jeez,
other artists.
I'm
was
sure it's even
37.
more now because they're probably like way out of print and even more expensive.
Yeah.
Probably like what? God, I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah.
26 hardcover volumes.
But yeah, it was like 36. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And then they said like as kind of a jokey thing, the Dark Horse one was number 37. Remember?
Yeah.
I thought that was cute.
Yeah. By the way, has anyone seen the Frank Miller Spirit movie?
It doesn't exist.
Long time ago.
No, I was gonna watch it, but it's like $17.99 on Google Play. So
Yeah.
well,
Wow, they should pay you that.
It's free to pirate that shit.
Like
Yeah,
you rent
I
the
love
movie
it.
and they pay
They give you
you.
a credit.
Yeah.
But you have to actually watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to like pass a test and mail it in and they give you a credit.
Yeah. The movie was awful. It was really bad. I remember
Well,
seeing it in the theater.
that's what's
Oh,
embarrassing
me
is
too.
like Frank Miller. If he's such a fan of Will Eisner, how could he screw that up so badly, right? But it's because he tried to make it like Sin City. But whatever, that's a whole other discussion. I just want to talk.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, because my history was from the movie. I was like, I guess this is jam packed with sexy ladies, but
Mm.
then when I read it, I was like, no, this wasn't it at all. It's
No.
like, I guess,
They
was it
didn't
the same
put
thing?
women in comics in the 40s. Come on, Keith.
No, they did have the what's her name?
They had the cleaning lady, the stupid, sexy cleaning lady.
No, there's the one who was
Paraffin.
the depression.
Oh,
They
the
had
one with
noir.
the wife.
Yeah, the strange case of Mrs.
Yeah, Paraffin.
Paraffin.
Somebody said that was their favorite one. I can't remember.
That was really good.
I think
I thought-
Carlos mentioned it as being
It was
better.
like sound was my favorite. I think Mrs. Paraffin is like worth reading. Like Mrs. Paraffin,
Yeah.
I feel like if I had just read it like randomly, I was like, well, that was pretty good. It was like there was some interesting stuff going on in there.
Mhm.
Well, I just want to jump to staying on the art for a minute. I want to talk about color because my first impression going in was that I didn't like the colored stories, and I think some of them were colored modern day, which I didn't like. However, I want to talk about this story, which is
Little Adam.
yes, which was basically a satire of Lil Abner and Dick Tracy or whatever. But like, if you can see my screen, like the color here is incredible. I think this is also an example of Jolie mentioned his inking, like the texture of the rain, versus what it looks like inside. All the characters here, the cartooning is incredible. The action going on in the foreground with the spirit versus what's going on in the background. There's so much information there. But as you flip through, like one of my apps, like it gets better here. But one of my favorite panels in the whole book is coming up. If I can sorry, I'm in the guided view here. Where the hell is it? Oh, maybe it's not even the story. Oh yeah, here it is. It's coming up. Oh no, it's not. Sorry, guys. Oh, it's right here. It's right here.
You've taken us on an emotional roller coaster ride.
So I love this right here. Oh my God, with the yellow light down here in the corner. And then you go to the next panel and you see the yellow coming in here. I freaking love this. Like and that's the thing is that again, this story does not knock my socks off, but just because of the aesthetic of the story, I could read this until the end of time. I love it. So did anyone else have any thoughts about the color versus black and white there?
Well, I do want to mention that if it at the time it was published, it would have been with the 4-color process.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, and I saw some panels and it was very drab. I mean, it was old newsprint. So
Mhm.
but yeah, so I do appreciate the recoloring. I do think Julie talked about the line work, and you really know, I mean, obviously you really notice that in the black and whites panels. So, I don't know. I'm sick of one, half a dozen of another.
I much prefer the black and white. Like the first story was so hard for me. I was like, this is so 90s. It aged
Right.
so much. But like I said, the line work is so amazing. I wanted them all to be in black and white so that I could just admire it more because his inking is just like, it's so fucking good.
Yeah.
Right. I want to quickly show the example that I posted of the comparison. If you can see my screen, this is the original coloring, and then this is the where is it? All right, sorry, that's the original, and that's the recolor. So
Like the original band.
yeah, I'd rather look at this.
I mean, it
Anyway,
was designed with that in mind. So
Yeah.
right, but anyway,
It seems really strange that they would the dead cartoonist has a red shirt on. Like I get what they're going for in the new coloring of the night scene. It looks nightier.
mhm.
But it didn't look any less nighty in the original, so why bother? I don't know. I prefer the original colors. I'm with Lucy. The first story, I almost threw this book across the room because I could not get through that first story because one, the colors were terrible.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll agree.
Aside from the story being like kind of garbage, but or not interesting. I should say better things like not interesting, or have better criticisms like that. But like
Mhm.
the bubblegum pink, it was very Krang for me.
Right.
And it didn't say spirit. It said Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Mhm.
I mean, they are in a sewer. I get it, but
it's a little Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles humor there.
yeah. I'm glad you're there with me, Carlos.
Yeah, this is like, I will say that I appreciate that this story feels like it's closer to the original color. And although I didn't like this story all that much, what is this one? Wanted.
Is that the first one?
No, the first one after this one is the one about the guy who accidentally figures out like the design for an atomic bomb.
Oh, yes.
I will say one thing that I think gets underplayed a lot is like how doom-filled the spirit is. Like there are a couple of stories that end with the potential destruction of the earth, like just hanging over us. And it's not unusual for like a major character to just die, or like the major character in the story to just die. Which I don't know, sort of give these stories like some weight at least. Like,
well, I think, and that's why someone mentioned noir earlier. I think this actually was very noirish, like proto noirish, you know?
Very much so.
What's that?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Especially this Paraffin story.
Yes.
I was like, that's straight noir. Like
Yeah, that's one of the best ones, right?
Like that very much. I mean, I don't know. I wish it was I wanted a little bit more out of it, but it was a very good story. I don't know. I'm just overly critical sometimes.
No, that's okay.
This was my favorite page in the Paraffin story, was the one where well, my screen is mirrored, but the one with all the cats where we get introduced to the cat. But
that's great. Yeah.
The way that cat actor drove me crazy though. It's like, that's not how paper works.
Right? No, it's not. Oh my god.
But you know what?
I'll
go ahead, Joey.
Met a cat.
Because it was like a really good mix of how like to me this was like almost like overdoing it, too many case files. It was like gimmicky.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate that he was like trying things. Like especially like not the beginning of a medium. Like comics had been around for like 50 years, but like longer form comic books. Like more or less at the beginning, like he was like, well, we're gonna do a story that's just based around case files. Let's see what happens. Well, it wasn't that successful. Back to the drawing board.
See, it's funny.
I gotta think that so many of his choices were just driven by the need to come up with material week after week after week after week. 7 pages every week. I mean, you got to come up with a heck of a lot of ideas. And I think that 7-page limit also forced him to condense so much, especially with that Mrs. Paraffin story. I like the page that has the case files that are talking. Those are the witnesses that are saying, oh, he's full of baloney. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah. I mean, and sometimes
right here,
like,
yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. So
and think about some artists who would be doing that story today, and like interviewing the witnesses would take like half the issue, like at least 12 pages, right? And here he does the whole thing in one panel, and it was just he just has such an ability to present so much information in such a tiny little tight space.
Well,
I still can't figure out I just have to say, could you go back to that last panel, Mike?
This one?
The one with the case, this one with the case files. I cannot figure out the lighting.
Oh, here?
Actually, that's the shadow of her going toward the spirit.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
The window, I'm just kind of like, how does that work? But that's just a small nitpicky thing.
It's for this story. So it opens up with her in front of a grid. I just want to highlight, just appreciate it. Then the next panel, they're on a grid. And then there's the one that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you gotta go 3 more pages, but then yeah, I mean, like there's the courthouse. I don't know how much that one is, but then there's the spirit on the disco floor where he's yeah, it's just yeah, I don't know. It's like a one issue thematic
thing.
Like he goes through all over the place, and this he's tying it together. I mean, like I think she appears in every one where this imagery is there.
Well, she's in a prison of her mind, right? Like she demands to be in prison over and over. Whoa!
Yeah, these grids keep reappearing in the story, and she is in every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like it does start off with her in front of a bunch of prison cells. Like she's asking to be arrested. Like, is she arrested? She's just taken to court. I don't think that she's like spending time in jail. But
no, that's what she's asking for over and over again.
That's what she's asking for. She doesn't get it until she takes the pill. Yeah, so it's a bunch of prison. It's explicitly prison bars in the first image, and then throughout. They appear in front of her. Yeah, it's just, I just wanted to highlight like, oh, this is really nice. Really well done.
Yep.
I just want to say briefly, so Jolie and I review 80s comics pretty much every week, and there are so many tropes of bad storytelling we come across over and over again. Like, a few minutes later, and then like, the art doesn't tell the story, so they'll have a little caption that says, and then they did this, and or sometimes it's doubling up on what they're showing. But in this book, you get examples like this of, okay, how do I show someone fumbling around in the dark for something? You cross his arms. You look at that and you know exactly what's happening. He doesn't know where he's feeling around. And that's just an example. Mike Prime, you talked about like every week, you not only are you being forced to tell a story, you're being forced to come up with new ways to get that information across and as economical a way as possible. And I think that's a great example right there.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Julie.
The entire panel is black as well. So not only can he not see, we can't see his face. Like the source of you're seeing is been erased from the panel, and it's as dark as possible, very high contrast, as dark as possible.
Right.
Yeah. The next panel is even cooler.
The matches?
He gets to have his cake and eat it too.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like, both show what's happening and show that the spirit can't see anything.
Mm-hmm.
This oh my God, I could put this on my wall. This is incredible. Him with the light, with the candle, and then the cat right here. It's just incredible. And this is an example. I don't know if this is a different colorist, but the colors in this one are much better, I thought.
There were two colorists that worked on this book.
Oh, okay.
So I can't. In the front of the book, it tells who did what.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like at least the colors that they chose seemed a little bit more appropriate.
Right.
Like, her shirt, it's not like blood red, but it's just this nice rich magenta.
Mm-hmm.
What else? I love how this cat is also reading the list.
Yeah, I love that too. Yeah.
That's
those little touches are great.
Because the cat can read.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I was like, is the cat licking him though?
It is.
Okay.
I think it is.
It looks like he scratched him in the face and then is licking the blood off, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
I also just want to point out, we keep talking about how like producing 7 pages a day is crazy. It always makes me think, or like 7 pages a week is crazy. It always makes me think of Osamu Tezuka, who did 20 pages a day.
Okay. So he's got Will Eisner beat then.
Yeah, no, this is like, I mean, it's different because it's manga, so it's very simplified, but
still, Jesus, so much. Like, my hand hurts thinking about it.
All right. So I want to mention I think he drew this picture and then made the story around it.
That's a great picture. Yeah.
I mean, that's worth it though. I like that one a lot. The little kid, he's
Yeah.
such a shit. That was really fun.
He's like imagining himself choking this kid.
I love that one. I like that story a lot.
You just like child abuse, though.
Shut up. This is horrible.
Look,
this is on record.
We're all amongst friends here, okay? There's no reason
up.
to judge.
I have no children and I don't abuse any children that I come across.
You just enjoy it.
No, it's horrible. I like
Wink.
imaginary children being abused.
She's winking off.
Terrible. Stop it.
That's why we can never see her monthly.
Slander.
She's abusing children off the screen.
Yeah.
Well, no, she doesn't want her face being filmed because there's warrants out for her arrest.
That's
Doesn't
fine.
want the automated CIA
The AI.
face recognition
The AI will know.
scanners to pick her up and find out her
Mhm.
location.
It's true.
I think the strange case of Mrs. Paraffin would have been much better if she died not as the result of coincidence.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
it said that she was shaking the envelope. I took it to be that she knew what was in there and was doing it while the person's back was turned.
Well, they didn't. I don't know.
He said it's empty. For a moment, I thought there was a cap.
Yeah, and then it was too late. So I agree. I think it was an accident. I don't think she did it. But you're right.
You
I
know
think
what?
it would have been more interesting if she did it on purpose.
I don't think you could depict that in the Sunday comic in the 50s, though.
Suicide. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
got away with a lot,
Maybe.
though.
I mean, that's why the comic books code came, or that was like, they got away with a lot more.
But this was published in a newspaper. I mean,
They could have made it a little vaguer though, so that they could kind of
Yeah.
out of it. I think that would have been more fun if they just if they cut out that part and just showed her drinking the drink and the letter open.
Yeah.
I think they could have. I think they could have.
Yeah, you take out that speech bubble, and suddenly it's like a much better story.
I
Mhm.
think that it's probably just a product of the time that he couldn't be that on the note. I mean, explicit.
I
so.
don't think so. I think he just wanted to be like, suicide's always wrong, kids. I feel like it's a personal stance he wanted to make, which is
Well,
a thing people do, and that's fine.
I don't know. I mean, he had that really racist character that he eventually snuffed out.
Yes, he did.
Which racist character?
The
The
Ebony?
little
sidekick
kid.
kid.
Yeah. I will say that the kid, as racist as that character is, it did win an NCAA award at the time because there were no other depictions of Black people in the comics.
Mhm.
So,
NAACP, for the record.
what did I say? Did I say NCAA?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like
Like a leopard
Yeah.
kid. It was funny.
college ball. Is that it?
Yeah, that's college.
Yeah, NAACP. Yes.
Yes.
It won an NAACP award. So,
Well, didn't they replace that character with a monkey?
I don't think so.
that's-
As there was a copycat comic that
Ah.
did replace it. He replaced it with a white kid, which
I was
With
gonna
the red
say
hair?
that. I think it was that one little kid that went on the island with them.
yeah.
yeah.
You know, I got to point out, I think one of the reasons these stories are so limited in scope or whatever is because they might have been purposely avoiding any stories with Ebony. And since he was in so many of them, it'd be like trying to find a Batman story without Robin at this time, right? Maybe that's why.
That's a good point. Maybe.
Yeah, Ebony shows up very briefly in a couple of them, but yeah, I got that impression too. Like when I read this, I was like, yeah, from the old panels that I would see from old comics, it's that he instead of thinking to himself, he'd be talking to Ebony.
Right.
Hmm.
Mm,
Like in that
makes
Mrs.
sense,
Paraffin.
though.
When he's like, oh, I'm thinking about these characters, it would be him talking to Ebony. So
No, that makes sense because that is a really used comic book thing, and it's kind of obnoxious when they do that, like when they're just thinking of themselves for panels and panels. it's just weird. But if he's like having a conversation with someone, like, well, why are you doing that? And like, well, because of this. Like, it's a much smoother way to do exposition.
And I mean, like, they do have that little disclaimer at the beginning of this collection. Like, I wish that wasn't, you know, I think you might be right, because it was like, you know, there are so many, you know, the octopus, like, he shows up and they talk about like what a big character he is, and then he's like there for like 3 panels in this collection. Like, if he's such an important character, why are we getting just this?
Right.
But yeah, it was like there must be something going on. I thought that was like maybe there was another collection that used like all of the most famous stories, but like, yeah, no, that makes also.
No, there is another collection that uses the most famous stories. There's a best of that came out like probably like 10 years ago.
But like, why would they not like have overlap? Like, I didn't know if that was possibly like they couldn't have overlap with something like that, or yeah, no, the explanation. We just want to avoid any discussion of his sidekick at all, or as much as we can. That makes sense.
I wonder if maybe this book is like intended for people that are already familiar with these comics.
That was the feeling I got too.
Yeah,
like, it's a comics book comic.
Yeah, because like they talk about like, oh, you know, of course it's the octopus, and then you know,
exactly.
The most famous story, Sans Serif.
It's very much the Andy Kindler of comic books. It's a comic.
Nobody knows what you're talking about.
That doesn't matter. I know.
Okay, so I just want. So we talked about the filing cabinets used like as part of the storytelling. That's probably the most obvious example of something you can only really do in a comic. You couldn't really duplicate that in a film or in prose. Did you guys find any other examples of devices that he used that were probably unique to comics that couldn't be duplicated in any other medium?
I mean, the way that he used typography, you could in sound, you could like do it analogous. But like it wouldn't be like that.
Right.
Well, like, I mean, like Carlos mentioned a couple times the story sound, or and then I mentioned the no story this week, where it's just like, oh, this is just what I drew. And then there's another one where it's like the artist and that's sound. Yeah.
There's a couple there's like lots of little examples of them using the medium in interesting ways, like you know, this at the bottom here where it's like closer, and then the kind of the ink stain, which is it ink, is it blood, you know, that kind of thing. And then there's also, where was it that I saw it? Oh, in the one where he's parodying the other comic book writers, and when he gets to their characters, he's like imitating the art style.
That one was really fun.
I love that one. Yep, it's one of my favorites.
Oh man, that sent me down a Wikipedia wormhole about Lil Abner too. So
yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it would be hard to imitate styles.
Like,
so, like in real life, like you could just have people dress up like them, but it wouldn't be Annie.
Can't imagine doing that except for in a cartoon. Like that would be the closest you can get to being able to do that.
There is absolutely no overlap between this and the Best of the Spirit collection.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
That's funny. Yeah.
What were we gonna say, Jolie?
I was gonna say, Lucy's right though. You can do this in another medium successfully, and it's animated. Live action, it would just look hokey.
Right.
Because I was thinking about the Mrs. Paraffin story and how, like, all the witnesses are talking in the file folder, and it's like you could do that, but it would look really. It would take away from the seriousness, I guess, of the story. But if it was animated, we associate things like that happening in animation. It's easier for our minds to digest it in a nonsensical way. So, yeah, I was just trying to think of. Sorry, go ahead, Lucy. While I
Oh,
think
I was just
about
gonna
this thought.
mention real quick. NFLCL, Kuri Kuri, the anime, they did a scene where it was animated like South Park for like a minute or two, and it reminded me of that in a way.
Oh, it's just trying to think of like the torch, the story of the torch, and like, could this have been done any other way? Because the torch has everything. It has onomatopoeia. It has typography used in a very visual way. It has sheet music used to illustrate or create musicality inside a comic strip. It has interruption of a sponsor, which is weird. But we also have like the character interacting with the interruption. Could this be done in a different way? No, not as successfully.
The
I mean-
closest example I could really think of would be WandaVision and kind of what they did with those first two episodes. Kind of be sort of a similar type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even the commercials though, it's similar, but to do exactly this, where to do exactly this, it wouldn't be the same.
It couldn't.
They could do a WandaVision like thing, but to actually have the sponsor be interrupted by the character telling them to knock it off.
It's so cartoony. Like,
Yeah.
I can't imagine it being anything else other than either comic book or animated. Like, I just can't.
Yeah, like if they were. Sorry, Carlos, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think he does it a little bit everywhere. Like, I think he really is, like, knows the medium really well, or like internalized it and could recreate it. If we go back to this, like 2-page spread in sound, right? Like, or actually like even 3 pages, like he has the onomatopoeia running all through. And then on this page, like for the first time, I think in the story, or at least the first time in like a while in the story, like the onomatopoeia just drops. But he's using sort of the rows almost as sentences and the page as a paragraph.
Yeah.
But it works differently. So the onomatopoeia just drops. He has like this series of actions right here where he gets up and he goes back to the drawing board, and then like this sentence, right, or this row is all about the drawing board, and then it explodes down here when he's talking about, you know, I feel the fingers around me choking, and then we have like another row where the onomatopoeia comes back, but he waits until like the next page. Like in some ways it would make sense for it to come back in these 2 panels, right? But instead he waits so that it's more in line with the rhythm of how like we read a comic story. So then you get the onomatopoeia, and then it drops out when he dies, right? And it's like almost to say like, you know, his subjectivity is gone. Like he doesn't hear that stuff anymore because he's dead. Like,
you know, it's also funny talking about page design. There's nothing worse than when you have a comic page that's building up to the revelation of a character, and it's like panel 1, panel 2, but the bottom panel shows the guy. So you're like, well, I already know who the guy is. You can't build it up. You have to space the pages out so that the reveal is on the next page, right? But too many writers and artists don't think of that. Or maybe it's partly also the companies, you know, they got to stick an advertisement in there somewhere. But anyway, it's very important to, you know, to make that page design part of the story, I think, so that you can control how the reader gets the information, right? And that's a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, didn't he do that in the Gold? Yeah. Where it's like, you know, he goes from that to like, you know, it's not like he's hiding anything, but it's like, it's very purposeful that like, you know, like they're just tooling around, and then the very first thing on the next page, like it felt like that was intentional, like what exactly what you're talking about, where it was like, I want this to be its own thing, and I don't want it like, I want it to be a surprise when you read it. Like, oh, there's this city that's been hiding out on the mountain for 100 years.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and also I wanted to mention, Jolie was talking about Torch. It was like, I feel like that was like just a straightforward, like half of it was just a straightforward spirit story. I mean, like, we got like the crazy supervillain, the Torch with like the little flamethrower thing, and it was like, even he was like, I need to change this up a bit. So, like, yeah, I felt like that was like probably like what the spirit started out.
That's like basic stupid spirit. You mean like that's status quo? Yeah.
Yeah, and so like it is its own whole story encapsulated with this other story running around with it, where he's just like, I don't know, like I'm trying to say, like it's just the classic. I don't know. He's already turning itself on himself,
right?
In a story like this,
like he's parodying himself.
Yeah. It's like he tells a straightforward story, but then at the same time, he's glossing it with the other stuff. So like we get a whole spirit story, and we get a whole parody of the spirit, all in one thing. So,
good point. Well, it is also remarkable that there's in 80, however many years, there's only been 2 adaptations. There's only been one TV movie that no one remembers, and then Frank Miller's piece of crap movie, right? Like it's surprising they've never done a cartoon of this, but
yeah.
I mean, I think that's, there's a reason that you selected this, which was the historical reason, which is, it's. I mean, like there's not a ton of people who are just going out and becoming spirit fans organically. Right. I feel it's like, you get into comic books, they're called the Eisner Awards for a reason. You want to know more about it, and that's how you find it.
Right. I mean,
like I feel like a cartoon would bring a lot of new fans, but at the same time, it's also like,
well, it's like when Dick Tracy, the movie, came out in 91 or whatever. It's like the studio was like, oh, Batman, they made a movie of Batman, now we'll make a movie of Dick Tracy. It'll be just as popular. It's like they forgot no one had read Dick Tracy in 70 years, right? Like,
yeah.
So of course it wasn't as big, right? And I just rewatched that last year. It's not very good, but I do like the visuals. And I think
it's charming in its own way.
Right. It would be a cool way to adapt the spirit and do something like that where everything looks like a comic strip. That'd be pretty cool, I think. But anyway.
I think just an animated series.
Yeah, you're right. That'd be for sure.
This would be perfect. And you could just pick a bunch of random, like you could have it all where you can watch it out of order and just pick a bunch of random like little short stories and have them animated up. I think that would work really well.
I disagree. I don't think this needs to be adapted. Like, I don't like the spirit himself is not a very interesting character. Like, he's pretty flat, like sort of by design. Like, I think what makes this good is like the stories, like the times when it's really good is sort of the, like the one-off stories, and the, like what makes them really good is that they're good comics. Like,
right. I was actually going to ask that. Is it because when you go from 1940 to 52, the spirit does not change. You don't learn anything about him, really. He's just a vehicle to tell these stories in, and he's sometimes barely in the issue. And I think in one of these, he's only in one panel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's not like Batman where there's going to be a someone who's a fan of the character. That's why I think these new versions by like Darwin Cook, even though I like Darwin Cook and I like Matt Wagner, I don't see the point. I don't really care. Even Watchmen, I don't care about any Watchmen story that's not by Alan Moore, because it's not the characters, although they are good characters. It's the way that Alan Moore writes it and Dave Gibbons draws it. I think that's the case here too. It's just Will Eisner's storytelling. It's not the character, right? So yeah.
I just want to argue that I do want to read Tom King's Rorschach. Like, it's something I'm interested in. So anyway.
Oh wait, Tom King is writing Rorschach?
You weren't here last month. were you?
We talked about it.
Yeah.
Mhm. You missed the Tom King Lovin'.
Yeah. I just reread Mr. Miracle in the Vision. It's great.
Mhm.
Anyway.
So most of my questions are about the art. We've kind of covered most of them. They're kind of like, they're all along a similar vein. One of the ones I have here, I mean, these are kind of, I want to talk about the gutter. Does everyone know what the gutter is? The space in between the panels? I mean, again, I don't know if there's any specific examples you can think of, but are there parts where you really noticed a creative use of the gutter and like jumping from action to action in a way that, again, you can only do in a comic? Or is it, because I can't even think of any specific examples, so I don't know if anyone else can, but
I feel like there are.
I was gonna say, like, I think the fact that I didn't notice it, and like sometimes I'm reading a comic and it's really stark, for better or worse. Like I think more of like when it's on purpose, like with the Watchmen, I feel like it's very purposeful that like the way the page is laid out and like there's very specific and it's very noticeable, but that was his intention. I feel like they're not noticeable because it's his intention.
So
Does that make sense?
here's an example.
Like it flows well.
I think he was more interested
At the
in
top.
like overall design than like
Yeah, that's what I mean.
his transition. Yeah.
That's what I'm
Maybe,
talking
like-
about.
Yeah.
which story is that? Oliver?
This is gold.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Gold actually, I think a couple times it does this.
Mm-hmm.
We're
Yeah,
just-
Gold
there
has
is
some
no
interesting inset panels.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see which ones you shared, but I'm just going to share this one quickly. Is one of my favorite sequences in the whole book. When what's his name?
For examples.
What's that?
Oh yeah.
just like
Guys-
gold throughout.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I said there's more examples. So here, so there's an example here where, he's riding on his horse and you get this like kind of mini panel here where a guy's like looking at him through the sights on his gun. And then you have this example here where there's a mini panel inside of a panel. And then here where these panels are like connected with each other. So there's
Right.
lots. So in Gold particularly, I think there's a lot of examples of this.
What about even just a couple pages back? This is one of my favorite sequences when that guy, when he's kind of like walking out of the whatever house, and then he turns around and shoots him, and in the next panel he's already on the horse, and you just see in the bottom corner here the guy laying down with the smoke coming out of his guns. This is one of the best panels in the whole book for me because there's so much movement in this. You see the little trail of smoke coming behind the horse. The horse is leaning left. The guy is like balancing out his weight with his leg. Like it's just incredible the design there.
Really
I think.
good. Like he's like right mid jumping on the horse. Like,
Right.
it's a clever way to pick like the scene. Like I feel like he was probably looking at film strips of somebody jumping on a horse and like trying to pick which was the best one to pick.
Great point.
Yeah.
Yes. Right.
Like it has so much movement in it.
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah. There's so much happening. Like no words.
No.
Everything's already happened.
That's like
But
that's
it's
great
still-
though. It's all about show don't tell. And that's
Yeah.
what kills me about older comics a lot of the times. It's like so talky.
I'm gonna show. So, I'm just gonna share this page. So, a big influence on Will Eisner, what I'm gonna put it in the chat, was Milton Caniff, and like on a lot of action comics from this time. And it's sort of a similar thing. Like you can, I mean, just looking at each of these panels, you can see the influence. Like,
Oh,
Is
Taryn.
Milton Caniff, is he Terry and the Pirates?
yeah.
Okay.
Open the link and share
Like
it.
just-
I tried to share it just now, but it's disabled for me.
Not allowed.
Yeah, he shows a really good restraint in the fact that he can self-edit to the point where he knows what's most important
Mhm.
and what to show, which is important because I feel a lot of art that I've read and seen it's just like superfluous or self-indulgent or indulgent, not self-indulgent, but it's like indulgent. Just because you know that the art's good. I personally do want to see it, but it's like, but is it necessary? No.
Right.
He shows incredible restraint, and it's nice. But at the same time, it's a little cluttered. Gold, I had a particularly hard time with the story because it does one of the things that, and I'm sure that there are like scholars who study this because this is unique to comics, is or maybe it isn't, but they spell or they write accents,
Right.
Yeah.
which is like really hard to read.
Right.
I mean, prose does it too.
Yeah.
He kind of lays it on a little thick with that, personally.
I had a hard time with that story too for a number of reasons. Like that was part of it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
What are your issues with gold, Lucy? I'm curious.
Me too.
like I liked how it looked,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, kind of like what Jolie said, it was a little cluttery and like I didn't
Yeah.
think the story flowed as well as some of the others.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more text in gold than like in a lot of the other stories.
He starts off with the spirit going from the city to visit the Old West and then going to flying away and talking about Shangri-La. I mean, like, it's amazing how much they cover in 7 pages.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like I do
Feel like
understand that,
maybe
like,
it needed more time to breathe, though. I feel like maybe that was it. Like it was too much, too fast. Like
I love this
like
story.
calm down a little bit, guys.
That's how comics used to be, though. Like, you know, this is
You
it.
have ADD though.
It's
Yeah.
this page specifically for me that I had a problem with. It was like really muddy.
Yeah.
Couldn't get through it. It's too
Some of
much
them, yeah.
text.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like,
Because he shows so much restraint in so many other stories.
Mhm.
Like,
Well, I wonder which one is more common because, like, it, you know, I mentioned the Ebony comics where it would be like him talking to Ebony, you know, back and forth. Like, you know, like I never read a ton of them. You know, it was just like this is what it was like. So I wonder if he had, you know, I think this might be a special selection bias because there's only so many. You know, there's nobody else for him to like talk with in every panel. So I feel like these might be a little bit more.
Well, not only that,
yeah.
but you have comic book people picking comics, so they're not gonna pick the ones that are like super wordy. They're gonna pick ones that are interesting visually for some reason.
I want to read the best of collection now. Like my brother had it, but I never like sat down and read it. Like I want to buy and read. It's only $15.
Oh, why not? Treat
Yeah.
yourself.
Treat yourself.
Yeah, $15. Do it.
Actually, I'm kind of disappointed that you haven't already.
I mean, I hear and understand that, Keith.
I wonder what it's like for people who know how to read the English language but who've never heard a Western accent. Like, is this easy for them to read?
I mean, it also reminds me of like there was a meme that it showed me. It was like Japanese people arguing about King of the Hill. I thought it was so funny.
Yeah, because they
talk about subs and dubs all the time.
Yep.
Which one is better?
Yeah, they were
It's
like,
so funny.
you have to watch it in the original English because you don't get the joke. You know, so many jokes are lost, but in the dub, yeah.
Do that for a second. I feel like that's a sub versus dub.
I'm glad there are sub over dub
Japanese
King of the Hill fans.
Western weebs. What's the term for Japanese people who are weebs for Western
I
stuff?
don't know.
There's
I'm
got
sure
to
there's a
be
word for
one.
it, though.
Because there's a lot. Like there's enough.
Anglophile, maybe.
It's too fancy.
But it would be,
There's some,
yeah.
like, short little slang word.
For I to answer Jolie's original question, I don't think it would have been as big of a deal at the time because Westerns were like the most common,
They
like
were
American,
ubiquitous.
like from like 1940 probably through 1960. Like,
Hi-ho silver.
yep.
Someone who is obsessed with Europe or America, a Westaboo.
Taboo. Yes, I heard this before. I forgot.
An antonym of weeaboo.
That's right. I
Cute.
should have known that. I forgot. Westaboos.
They're really into 24 and Lost.
24, Lost, King of the Hill.
King of the Hill.
Simpsons would be another
Simpsons,
good
Family
one.
Guy.
Oh, I don't know about Family Guy. I could see Simpsons.
Mm-hmm.
Westaboo would love The Simpsons and King of the Hill. Those are like the top tier American animation.
Well, let's see. Oh no, this is somebody who
American baseball though.
Mm-hmm.
Sayukabure. No, that's
Ameri-
not
yeah.
there.
American football.
That's more literal.
None of that soccer crap.
Okay.
So have we reached our natural conclusion here? I get the sense we have.
Yeah, we can go around the group again, give it our final rating, and then also I just want everyone to answer whether they want to read more Spirit or more Will Eisner. And so I guess let's start with Lucy.
Oh, yeah, I'm still not giving it a rating.
Okay.
I am interested in reading the best of. Also, I noticed he did a
Is that-
sci-fi story
Well, I'll take a tiny
that
bit.
really
That's good.
seemed interesting. Like people were complaining about it being too wordy though on the internet, which I was like, oh no. But I want to read Life on Another Planet. I'm like really want to read that one. It's like now's a good time for a weird alien book, I think.
Yeah, there's a whole era where the spirit's on the
guys.
moon.
Huh?
Like, there's a whole era of the spirit where he's like on the moon and stuff, and it's like
Oh, hell
really
yeah.
good art. So yeah, I'd love to check that out too.
Yeah. Like that looks really cool. Like I said, like aliens are coming back, guys. They're cool again.
Did aliens stop being cool?
They're cooler. There's more heat on the aliens now, I think.
Okay.
Because like all these, like we got the space task force, and you got the Navy
Oh.
people coming out saying they're seeing aliens all the time. It's great. So I'm like, I'm ready for an alien comic. I think that would be fun. All right. One of you two gentlemen.
I will give it. I will stay with my seven bags of popcorn out of 10. I enjoyed reading it. Like I had mentioned before, I wasn't really blown away. I enjoyed it mostly kind of as just sort of a historical curiosity. I appreciated, some of the insights. I would be interested in reading more Will Eisner. Carlos has gotten me intrigued about A Contract with God. I'd be very interested in reading that.
too.
So yeah, I would be interested in that. Keith.
Yeah, I gave it an 8. I would say this is a very odd selection. So I guess I give the Spirit an 8. This selection, I feel like it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another, where it was like some of these stories are very like artsy fartsy and interesting in their own way, but they're not a good representation of the Spirit. Like I think Sean said, like this didn't make him want to read any more of it. And I feel maybe this collection was preaching too much to the crowd. Yeah, I am still interested in reading more of the Spirit, maybe the best of the Spirit, but
Only $15.
I know.
Let's do it.
I know. So yeah, I'll stick with. You know what? I'll go back to my original 7. So I'm all over the place today. So But
Wow, wow.
Alex?
I think I'll keep the score at a 7. Yeah, that was pretty good. I'll definitely check out that Best Stuff collection and probably Contract with God. What about you, Julie?
I won't read. Okay, I'll do both. I'll probably read more Will Eisner. I during our little whatever where we petered out a little bit, I started reading Fag and the Jew. I immediately borrowed from Hoopla Fag and the Jew because it had really great art. I just wanted to see if it's still the same. I will. It looks like. Pardon?
That one looked really interesting too. Like I would like to read like the conversations that go on in that, and like I don't know. It excited me when I read that.
Yeah. Like God, the forward is by Brian Michael Bendis.
Oh no!
Do you know what's even more exciting is that not only is it by him, but he also he uses a photo of Ebony. Oh.
Mm.
But anyway, that's Bendis. Yeah. It's clear that I like Will Eisner as an artist. The most. Will I read more Will Eisner? Yes. Will I read more Spirit? Probably, yes. That's it. I think I gave this like a 7. I'm still not going to give it any more of that. I really like the point that the Spirit is a flat character. It's really not. There really isn't anything more to him than these adventures and these stories that have kind of been plucked from the collection are kind of the best of the best, or the standouts of the 80 billion plus years that he was creating all of these Spirit adventures. So it is good to see what other people are seeing as important. I see it as important. Still a 7. Patrick.
I think I'll stick to my 6.5. Well, I guess I appreciate the groundbreaking formalist aspects of it. Like the flatness of the character is something I can't quite jump over. I mean, I'm not opposed to reading more if I'm assigned it as homework, but I don't think I'm going to seek it out. Mike Prime.
Thanks, Patrick. I'm going to take it up to 7.5 just because of the artwork. You all have given me an even better appreciation of what Will Eisner was doing. It is phenomenal what he was able to convey. As far as reading more, though, the other day I ran across my complete run of Darwin Cook's The Spirit.
Oh.
I have them all. I remember when I bought them, I enjoyed them much more than I enjoyed reading this collection. So I think I'll mosey on down to the basement and dig those babies up and take a look through them again to see if they're worth another read. But Darwin Cook is awesome. I love his storytelling. He's no Will Eisner, but he did all right. So let's see. Carlos, have you gone yet?
No, I haven't. I'm going to keep it at a 7. I mean, I think this collection is pretty weird. I do want to go and read the best of. I don't know. I love A Contract with God. I think it was him as a reflective mood in his youth, about his youth. And I think that book is really good. So I might go reread A Contract with God at some point in the next couple of days. Who hasn't got?
I haven't.
Go ahead, John.
But yeah, I would keep it the same with a 5 for the story and a 7 for the art. I guess I would read more if it was placed in front of me.
If someone turned the pages for you.
I might be able to handle that.
All right.
That's my job. That's one of my jobs. I put stuff in
Oh.
front of
The
him. Here, read
Clockwork
this.
Orange machine with his
Yeah.
eyes.
Sean, look at this.
Yes.
Look at this. Look over here.
All right. I think I'm the only one left, right? Is there anyone else? No? Okay. So yeah, I gave it an 8. I still give it an 8. I'm definitely gonna read more. And like I said, I think all modern, at least superhero comics, can learn something from this. To not focus so much on changing status quo and events, and just tell self-contained, simpler stories. Because even though these stories are dated and none of them really knock my socks off, like I said, I still would rather read this than most modern comics. So I'll just leave it at that. And that's it for the Spirit. So what is our next book? I believe Mike Prime, you have the list.
So our next book is Promethea, Book 3,
Woo!
by Alan Moore and J.H. Williams III.
Yeah.
The person who selected it was Chad. It contains Promethea issues 13 through 18.